The Texans strike gold at home against the 49ers. We're going to talk about that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Touchdown for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to The Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chaparria. Tom, how are you doing today?
It's a good day to be a Texan fan, baby. It was gloom and doom 7 days ago, and now 7 days later, I think there's a chunk of the fan base that's like, hold up now, maybe they got something. Maybe it's not all lost. We're here to break it all down.
That we are, and we'll dive right into it. I want to get into the positives and negatives. I feel like we'll be a little more balanced in this discussion, so I'll let you start it off. What do we got?
I mean, positives. You saw a team that held the football for 41 minutes. I mean, you could get into all the drives and the scores and only having one punt and all the different details, but I mean, when you control the clock for 41 minutes, even the drives that were field goals were long, sustaining drives. I mean, with this defense, we talk about, I think the phrase that you use all the time is, see, now I can't think of it because I was just trying to steal it.
Atrophy?
The atrophy, there it is. We talk about the atrophy of the defense, and when they're just not on the field, you're going to get the best version of one of the best defenses in the entire league. So let's do more of that. I really think you saw a lot of the young guys get some really good run. We'll talk to all of that. I think this is a team that has been trying, I think, to slowly incorporate some of the young guys. And now I think, everybody's like, screw that, pedal to the floor with it. I thought they did really good. Negatives, if I had to pick a negative, it's another team that you kind of have to look at that they beat and go, okay, on paper, they look really good. But they were so decimated with injury. Do you really feel like they got the best version of the Niners? I mean, no Joey Bosa, and there was other guys that were out. Huff was another guy, big loss. I just want to not get too over my skis, as the saying goes, with how great this win was, because while I do feel like they have to take care of business, you have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and I believe they were supposed to beat this team based on the lack of what they had. They still haven't beat a team where you're like, whoa, I don't have a reason, I don't have an excuse, I don't have a, well, what about, you know what I mean? When they beat, like, for example, this Denver team,
They're already stacking excuses for that one with Surtain being out.
That's a big loss. It's a great team. The Texans are going to be down. Nico Collins probably too. So I think that's something where it kind of like offsets a little bit. I just feel like this is another step up the rung. If you were going to do that with how important, and I know you love to do it, and I don't necessarily care for it. The quality of the win. That's the negative. We still haven't had the quality of the win that guys like James Roy and some of the other masses absolutely thrive on. Give me quality, not quantity, baby.
You're the one who brought up this conversation right now, so I know that it's spreading this feeling, because what happens is, like, I started the conversation very early, right? But what happens is as we approach the playoffs, you start to look back at the games the Texans have played. And sure, they can clinch playoff spots, but you start looking back and going, okay, the wins, we got the Titans, the Cardinals, the Raiders, and you start looking and you start going, wow, those are not very good teams that we got wins against. And the close games that we won, I'm not sure those were the best of the best teams that we played. And you start thinking, well, we're only going to be playing the best of the best in the playoffs. So then where you start weighing the probability of win, and I just start doing that way earlier than I think a lot of people do. which is why you hear that conversation from me maybe a little earlier in the season than most. But it is something I think it's evidenced by the way you brought it up just now, that it is a conversation that people will start having over the course of the season, especially if this Texans team, looking at this upcoming stretch, they could very easily be 6-4 going into that 3-game AFC contender stretch. And we'll start having that conversation of, okay, well, if they can beat the Bills, Colts, and Chiefs and be 9-4, that's a really good looking team. You beat 3 contenders. You went from a 0-3 start to losing 1 game over the course of the next few. Like, it changes the view of the team. Like, I think that you go from this like, woe is me, mock draft season, this team sucks, to like, wow, this team could really make some noise in the playoffs in a very short stretch of time. So it does make a difference. And I think but like you said, and like I think I agree with you on some of those games, like that 3-game stretch against those AFC contenders, those could look ugly as all get out, but those are contenders. You win those games, it's a good look. Like, that's just what it comes down to.
And to be 100% clear, I do not care. This is not a negative for me. This is a negative that I know you speak to, and you see it in the socials. If you look at them, there are people like James that want quality all the time and don't care about quantity. For me, as a guy that likes to go, okay, this is a team that's trying to grow up, right? This isn't the Buffalo Bills that have been doing it for 5 or 6 years. This isn't, the Chiefs that have owned football for a decade. This is a team that's 3 years into a rebuild, that's on their second offensive coordinator, that is trying to grow up fast to keep up with the talent, the quality of the player that we believe that they have. So that's like the thing where it's like some people don't want to wait for that grow up, and then some people are okay with it. And now for me, I can understand where if you looked at Nick Caley a month ago, it was like, what is this guy doing? And then you looked at him on Sunday and you go, I can kind of see the vision. Okay. We talk about CJ and all the different things. People forget this is his 3rd year and he's 23. Like, he acts and talks and walks you feel like he's closer to 30. And I think people hold him to a higher standard because of the way he carries himself. He doesn't carry himself like a young kid. So for me, it's kind of like, I have to look at those things. Now, some of the fan base just doesn't care. They're like, just give me the baby. I don't want the birth pains.
Oh yeah, I mean, and to be fair, right? Like, we can look, like, I like to reference history. If we look at the 2023 Texans, which is apparently what we're chasing, that's what everyone says. Like, CJ Stroud's 2023 season, one of the best rookie seasons ever. We want the Texans to be more like the 2023 Texans. That's when football was fun. Whatever you hear people saying about it, the simple fact of the matter is that they started 0-2. They didn't start 0-3, but their rough start to the season very much kind of mirrored what we're seeing right now, and we're kind of seeing it. If we want to try and make that comparison, we're seeing the Texans start to figure it out. And a win against the Broncos would go a long way in seeing that comparison come to fruition of them hitting their stride right as they're entering a very vital stretch of the season, which is they're going to play like 5 or 6 AFC games in a row, most of them against contenders in the conference. So this is a good stretch to get hot. And I think it shifts the paradigm and changes the view of this team. If they can get hot and win most of these games coming up. I don't even think they need to win all of them, but if they can win most of them, I think that they'll be in a good spot. But looking at the positives and negatives for me, both of them kind of intertwine into positives and negatives. So like your talking point of assessing that the 49ers defense was not healthy. I mean, I looked in the middle of the game, I was like, man, is the pass rush just non-existent, or is this Texans O-line actually figuring out how to pass block? And I think we can lean more in the direction of the 49ers pass rush just not being very present. The way they used blitzes and the way that they were trying to supplement was not helping them out either. But CJ Stroud had all day to throw, which is a huge positive, but you can also kind of temper that positive by how it was affected by the 49ers health on defense. And I think that's why a lot of people, myself included, going into this matchup, were like, the 49ers are a good defense. That is what they have always been. And then you go and so if like for example, the Ravens game, if you just blindly woke up from a coma after 3 or 4 years and heard the Texans were playing the Ravens this season, you'd have thought, oh, that Ravens defense is going to be really tough. But then if you actually look into it, I think I missed a lot of the injuries that were on that 49ers defense. So that would have definitely changed my expectations for the game. I think, a little higher on that Niners defense than I probably should have been going into the matchup. But the other part of it is the receiver room. Obviously, like, huge positive that for once in our lives, we said, hey, Nico Collins is out. We need to see wide receivers that are not him step up. And we got to see that. Every single, for those who keep up with fantasy football, every single ISU wide receiver in this Texans receiver room scored at least 10 points in fantasy football, which is huge. It's huge for me. It helped me move on in my guillotine league. So shout out to Jaden Higgins and Xavier Hutchinson for giving me that. But just getting a lot of good reps from those players. The negative that's kind of interlaced into that is that I don't know if I can even, like, I don't want to come across the wrong way saying this, but you have to think that this team came into this week without Nico Collins, and the big concern was who's going to step up. CJ Stroud has his only 300-yard game of the season. Was it at least mostly due to the 49ers' quality of defense? Maybe. If Nico was there, might he have actually taken advantage of that defense too? Sure. There's some discussion to be had, and I've seen a couple people bring it up on social media about how maybe CJ was stepping through his reads a lot quicker because he wasn't feeling the need to get stuck on Nico, because Nico's, by a country mile, the best wide receiver in the receiver core. So you kind of mess up CJ's progression, because instead of going to the next guy and just riffing like he's just kind of next hit. Okay, cool. It has a tendency maybe to get stuck on Nico Collins. And so without him there, that might have been something that caused them to play better. So there's the question of, if Nico's healthy, how does his reassimilation into the wide receiver room affect CJ Stroud's rhythm? I don't even know if that's all the way a negative. It's just a thought that's comes to mind, something I've seen kicked around out there on the interwebs. I want to get your thoughts on that particularly, which is why I brought it up last. But how do you feel about Nico Collins' absence leading and how the Texans performed and how him coming back could affect that?
I hate it because I believe it's true. I believe that CJ gets to this point where he's like, I have to feed this dude. And I think some of that is driven by the podcasters, the national media, the local media. Anytime they lose, it's okay. Did the guys that are supposed to do all the work do the work? And if Nico doesn't get the football, it looks like you failed because that's your best player on offense, for your best wide receiver. So I think, he feels a lot of pressure to get Nico Collins the football. I really do. I love what he did on Sunday because, like you said, it was, all right, get the ball out quick. And the first guy I see with a matchup that he wins, I'm getting him the football. And he wasn't stuck and he wasn't like trying to extend. And I believe this is on Nick Caley too, because he had a couple plays that were completely drawn up to get him 5 or 6 yards. And I love it. And I think the Texans sometimes in the past look like a team that was like, look, I need an explosive every time. It's a run or it's explosive. We're not playing, the check down. We're not playing okay, I'm just going to run a 5 or 6 yard out and give myself 2nd and 4 because they're free in some of those matchups, just absolutely free. Hutchinson won a couple different times. One time that CJ missed him, overthrew him, where it was just like, look, I'm going to get you 6 to 8 to maybe 10 if I break a tackle. And there's nothing they can do about it. It's just pitch and catch, simple stuff. And we've seen the Texans really struggle to move the football because they can't stay ahead of the chains, as they say, and they're always in a long down and distance. And this was a game where we didn't feel like that. Now, again, you can't really talk about that without talking about who was going to stop them. If they didn't bring 6 guys, they got 0 pass rush, and the Texans CJ was allowed to sit back and absolutely just take my time. And yeah. I've got all the time in the world. And if they set extra bodies, that opened up things like the huge Woody Marks play down the sideline. And those are things that I hope they exploit further as we go. I really feel like this was something the Texans should build on. This was a big game for me for Nick Caley because I think a lot of was talked about what he wasn't able to do against Seattle and how bad they looked against Seattle and some of the things that he could have been able to do and just didn't. And this game we saw it. QB sneak, we got QB sneaks. The short yard checkdowns, we got those. We got all the different guys involved. I mean, you saw Woody Marks run the ball. You saw Chubb run the ball. I thought they looked effective there. He just did a really good job of spreading the ball all the way around.
I agree with you. And to speak to the wide receivers, I mean, another comparison to 2023 that I could see, and a lot of people have made this comparison because with Tank Dell being out for likely the whole season, or maybe a chance he comes back for the postseason if the Texans can push into that. But that people are like, well, who's going to replace his production? And a lot of people look to Jalen Noel. They're like, third round wide receiver, smaller guy. That's probably it. And if we look at the parallels, I mean, Tank Dell had a couple of big plays that made people think he needs more time early on. And then week 3 in Jacksonville went on to have an explosive game and right up until he got injured was pretty much unstoppable. So looking at Jalen Noel have a little bit of a breakout game, probably not to the same magnitude, but I think this Texans team will have trouble saying, oh, we can't put Jalen out there because we've got Berrios, and that was a big issue that they had last season, or last game against the Seahawks, was that Berrios outsnapped Jalen Noel, and everyone was like, why is Berrios getting more playtime? Why is he taking over punt returner? Why is he doing all these things when we have this young guy who can step up and play this position, all those things better than him? And this week we finally got to see his snap share went down, probably because of personnel, but he was out snapping Braxton Berrios. He had a 10% more snaps. Some people might look at Jared Wayne having a higher snap share. I don't really factor that. They don't play the same, variation of wide receiver. So I don't think it's apples to apples to compare those two. But I like what we've seen from Jalen Noel, and I mean, if he can take on the Tank Dell character arc of 2023 without the injury, I think it'd be really good for business. That's for sure. Looking at it, we brought up the pocket. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion to be had about the fact that CJ Stroud with a clean pocket for pretty much the whole game was phenomenal. We look at the 49ers and kind of say, well, maybe it was not quite what it is. Do you think that we can comfortably say that it's a step in the right direction even, or do we kind of take this game with a grain of salt with how good the O-line improved in the passing game?
I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. I really do. As much as I want to be excited for Ursary and for this entire offensive line, because CJ was in the post game, he's like, look, I need 5 game balls from my offensive line. He's like, I'm not me without y'all. And he's right. However, I don't feel like they had to deal with what they're going to have to deal with Denver. And if you do something similar to that with Denver, then we're talking about an entirely different conversation. I talked about the timeshare with the 2 guys at left guard, and Lakin Tomlinson and Juice Scruggs. And it's almost 50-50. And to be honest, I think I understand it. I think Lakin Tomlinson being a little long in the tooth looks better when he's not out there all the time. I think he is the better left guard, and I think the Texans believe he's the better left guard. However, they also realize that they can't just run him out there over and over and over and over and over again. So they have to manage it. And that's why we have this timeshare. And I think that might work long term. I know people are upset. You heard the national broadcast talk about, oh no, this is wrong. You got to build chemistry, and they've got to, be next to each other and understand, tendencies and this and that. And I'm like, it's true. But if keeping Lakin Tomlinson fresh gives you the best version of him, and he's going to be enough, I'm not saying good, just enough, then that's what we got to do, as the Texans.
Yeah, I think you have to stick with one or the other. Like, that's me. The momentum thing, taking a guy out of the game and putting him back in, out of the game and putting him back in, just feels like it's counterintuitive to it's one thing if you have Lakin Tomlinson starting a whole half and he sucks. and you go, okay, well, we're going to throw Juice Scruggs in there for the second half and see what happens. That's different. That's adapting, trying to make adjustments. It's encouraged, but to be like, okay, you had your driver two, we're going to throw in another guy is like, okay, well, but how did he do on that driver two? Is he good? Did you like what he put out there? Because if you did, why are you rotating him? Like, in a game that relies so much on momentum, at times you would think you'd want to keep the hot hand in, but that's interesting to me, to say the least. For me, my take on it is this, and I've seen a lot of this, discourse over the course of the hours that have occurred since the game, about whose fault it is, or I guess who gets credit for the low pressure rate and everything like that. I don't think it's all the offensive line in this case. And one of the things that gives me an encouraging sign is that the offensive line, I think, did their part really well. I think that there was quite a few plays where you could say the offensive line did so well that CJ stood in the pocket and made a throw. But I think credit to CJ, I think CJ did a really good job of navigating pockets even when they got a little muddy. When things did start to break down, he did a really good job of moving and sensing where the pressure was coming from and avoiding it in order to buy more time in order to get some of those throws off. And Texans Jacob shared this from Next Gen Stats. CJ Stroud was 11 of 11 for 104 yards and a touchdown on third down. So I think that at least part of that, the pressure rate was like 16%. And it was a really good job, I think, jointly amongst everybody. Even considering where the 49ers defense was, I think that it was a good improvement, because obviously there is some part of the discussion around pressure on CJ Stroud where you go, okay, CJ, you got to get rid of the ball quicker. CJ, you're scrambling the wrong way, going backwards, putting yourself in a worse spot. The pressure's already there and you're just making it worse. And so in this case, it didn't feel like, when things broke down on the offensive line, the very few times that it did, CJ, I think, did a really good job of I don't want to say bailing them out, but the way that he navigated the pocket was something that I'd like to see him continue to do, because I don't think he's going to get clean pockets every play. But if I think it's something he did really well his rookie season. It was one of the things we always talked about was, outside of his stellar accuracy and ball placement, was that he could navigate a pocket and, even when it wasn't ideal, could get where he needed to be to make the throw. So I think overall, yeah, take it with a grain of salt the way the O-line played, but I think that what we can take from the combined effort to not give up a sack the entire game, and what CJ's part in it was, I think is a huge positive moving forward for this team, especially going up against a team that features a pretty nasty pass rush next week in the Broncos. But another thing to say, so we haven't really talked much about the defense. The defense had a pretty good game. There was a couple of plays, namely there was that George Kittle touchdown and the Juwan Jennings catch at the 1 yard line that were just crazy. It was just, I don't know if you can defend those much better, but what were your thoughts on some of those bigger plays the Texans gave up? If anything, I mean, to me, like I said, I don't think they could have defended it much better, but it was wild how many of those just insane catches were given up by the defense.
Well, the George Kittle touchdown absolutely could have been defended better. I think Kalen Bullock was trying really hard to intercept the football, when if he just knocks it down, we're not talking about it. And when you think about where they were, how much time was left, I think you just have to break it up. And I think he absolutely could have. Jason Braddock spoke to it right after the game. We did post game on Houston Sports Talk. He's like, look, he's there. He's just trying to intercept the football instead of knocking it down. If he just knocks it down, that probably doesn't happen. And the Jennings play, I think was a good play. I mean, they're not going to make every play. I feel like overall the defense did a phenomenal job, because I think they weren't asked to do too much. When you have them out there for one drive a quarter or whatever, and the plays are like 50 something to 20 something, it's really easy to pin your ears back, be fresh, and attack. And I think this is the perfect blueprint for this defense. You know what I mean? You have that offense find their way down the field, methodically, and then you just keep that defense fresh and let it eat when it's time.
I couldn't agree more. And another follow-up question is, which defensive performance did stuck out to you the most? Like out of all the players, with well rested, able to get after it, who do you think put in the best performance?
I thought Jalen Petrie had a really good game. He had a really good pass breakup on a play where it was one-on-one with him and CMC, where we've seen him in the past just get absolutely cooked. And it's interesting because after that one particular play, we didn't see Mac Jones go back to CMC so much until it was too late. And I'm not going to say that, Petrie like shut him down or anything like that, but the fact that he made the play may have impacted, and I felt like Petrie was all over the field anyway. He made a lot of tackles. I thought he played really good. Obviously, you could speak to, the usual suspects, right? Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson. I mean,
I was going to say, for me, it was Will Anderson Jr. I thought he absolutely dominated today, or on Sunday.
And I feel like he does every week. And I feel like he could be the guy every week, and no one would argue. But for me, I just felt like Jalen Petrie had a really good game. And, we're going to give plenty of love to Will Anderson Jr. and all those other guys. This was the one week I'm going to, Petrie's my guy.
I like it. I mean, overall, pretty stellar defensive performance. I think if like y'all said, I mean, if Kalen Bullock swats that ball down, maybe they give up 3. The score looks a little better, but it's still, that was the average that the Texans are giving up is what they gave up roundabout. So not a bad game at all. In fact, it actually is the equivalent of the best defense in the league's expected game. So and I think they moved back into the lead on total yards allowed. So they're number 1 defense in total yards and points per game. So and that's going to be vital moving forward. And we've spoken to this offense. I think, as much as I think anyone in the Texans fan base has had some doubt about it over the first few weeks, I've said it. I thought that their best course of action was to stick with Caley because best case scenario for them was that he figures it out. And so we've seen it in games against lesser opponents. We're just waiting for him to apply what he's learned here, what he's done, against the Ravens, against the Titans, against the 49ers, where he has called a really good offensive game. And we're waiting to see it happen against, and next week would be a great week for it to happen. I think that would be like a huge sign of a turning point for this Texans team, away from like, hey, are we even contending this year? Should we start looking at a high draft pick to like, no, we should start looking at how deep in the playoffs we're going to go, because this team is and they've teetered on that line, I think. And it's evident, like, as fans, like, I know you're a little more level headed than I am, but like fandom in general, a fan comes from the term fanatic. Like people will waver one way or another drastically based off the results they're seeing. And so I've seen, I myself, as a joke, posted a mock draft. I said, hey, if the Texans lose this game, I'll post a mock draft after the game. And I posted a mock draft, which was not a very good mock draft. Because it's too early. It's too early to tell what this team needs in terms, like, I can't go into a mock draft right now and seriously be like, this is exactly what's going to fix this team, except for maybe a guard, obviously, but that was a whole nother issue. But I think that Nick Caley figuring it out is still the best option for this team. I still am a firm believer that he will get at least this season. I'm not even sure the Texans would move on from him after one season, unless things got really bad throughout the rest of the season. But I think that we're seeing it start to piece together the best case scenario, which is Nick Caley starting to figure it out as an offensive play caller. Last thing I want to talk about is D'Amico Ryans in his interview towards the end kind of called out the media. It's like, hey, you all good? Like, what is your take on that? So, like, obviously, to me, it's the media's job when things are going, like, they're an extension of the fan in some way. It's not always that, because if they just ask the questions the fans wanted to ask, it would look really bad. They're professionals and they're meant to have an objective view of the organization. But things did get to a point over the past few weeks where, like, there was some very valid questions that the media had to ask as their job. Like, hey, here are some of the things we're observing that are going very poorly. What are you doing about those things? So I think personally, sure, I mean, the best time to call out the media for being negative is after a win. So go ahead and do it. But, like, to me, is it bothering you that much that the media has critiques about the way that you're functioning? Because if so, I don't know if that's indicative of an issue with the media or an issue with you. At this point, I would more lean towards you than the media if it's really getting under your skin that the media doesn't like that you are 2-4 after the offseason and expectations that were set. So I don't know what are your thoughts.
James Roy, are you good?
Are you good?
Look, I see both sides, man. I really do. And I, again, I guess me being the more level-headed dude, when he talked about, we don't listen to the outside noise and this, that, you absolutely do. That's why we're talking about it. And for me, I get where he's coming from. He's like, look, support this. You trust me to do it. Trust me to fix it. And I don't think he feels like he's getting the support. I think he feels like he's getting a lot of criticism from a lot of guys that, I don't think he holds in high regard as far as like football IQ. I mean, he kind of spoke to it himself. And sometimes I feel like the media comes after coaches and sometimes podcasters do too. Like they work for us and they don't, like that's the thing. Like we get this mentality, like, why aren't you doing what I want you to do? And it's like, because it's not for me to do what you want. And I feel like as fans, they get that way. And as the media, I think they get that way. And, they want them to answer a certain way. They want them to give them all the details, all the knowledge so they can turn around and form an opinion. And when they don't, they get some kind of way with the coach. And, I think this is probably the most edgy we've seen DeMeco Ryan so far. He's been, pretty much smiles and rah. And I think, he kind of got to a point where he's like, all right, I'm kind of not good. So, I hope that, this is much to do about nothing and it's not going to be a constant thing all year long after each loss. Cause I doubt this is going to be the last time they lose. And I hope that, the conversations aren't, the same. It's just tough. It's tough to be in the media. It's tough to be the coach. You trying to make everybody happy and you can't.
Yeah. And to me personally, like, so broad strokes, I've already given my thoughts, but like, I think there are some specific events this week that may have spawned that. So obviously DJ Bieniemy, the ESPN beat reporter for the team, went on with Paul Gallant, former radio guy, to kind of talk and spilled a lot of insight that he's gotten from the players on how things are going. It very much, I don't want to say this lightly, but it kind of felt like a smear campaign over what's going on inside the organization. We've obviously had, the pleasure of interviewing Aaron Wilson, who has kind of given us some insight into how he approaches things. And Aaron Wilson obviously didn't put this out because that's not how he would have approached it.
That's why he's the GOAT.
Which is why he's the GOAT. I mean, obviously it's not his place to protect the team if there's something wrong, but it very much putting out that story with the way things are going feels targeted. And I don't want to say clickbaity. He works for ESPN. He'll get it. He works for ESPN. He'll get his clicks either way. But I think that interview, that talk, kind of made its rounds. And then he also tweeted and deleted a post that basically said, when Steven Nelson came after DeMeco Ryans, we didn't see any of the players defend DeMeco Ryans. And I think a lot of people took that as a shot at the players for not standing up for DeMeco. But what it really came across as to me was a shot at DeMeco and Nick and the culture and how the players are not as on board with what's going on in the organization as we're being led to believe, which of course, if that's the case, I'd love to know it. But the timing with which all of this was released kind of felt like after a bad loss, not even a bad loss, it was a 1-score game. It just wasn't there was some opportunities in that game that felt like they were missed. But with where the Texans were at 2-4, it's kind of like hey, this is what everyone's going to want to hear. It's going to confirm what they're thinking. So let me put it out now. If that's stuff that you knew for such a long, because it's not something you just know suddenly. Like, I don't think like a player went up to DJ Bieniemy and was like, hey, things suck. By the way, for the past 2 years, we've all hated DeMeco. But like to go with that timing of like, hey, that's something you had to have known for a while. and you're probably hanging on to it for the right time. To me, it just feels like, okay, cool, put that out then. But like, I think that may have been something maybe D'Amico caught wind of. As much as he doesn't pay attention to the noise, if there was one thing that happened this week that was going to push D'Amico Ryans to make a comment about how the media has been to the team, that was probably something that I would have thought would have pushed D'Amico in that direction. Do you have anything to say about that before we kind of bring this thing to a close?
Oh, I think you're spot on. I think that had a lot to do with it. I think there was guys in the media, but locally, nationally, talking about Nick Caley's job, and who's calling shots in Houston. Is it Caserio? Is it D'Amico? Is it neither? Like, there was all these questions, all this stuff churning because they a lot of people felt like this was a really bad loss to Seattle. I really think Seattle's really good. And it's more about Seattle and less about Houston. And this was more of a confirmation. No, this is a really good football team. And Houston's still, like I said, growing up. You're taking an offense and trying to grow it on the fly, both the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. Because if you listened to CJ Stroud in his postgame, which was so interesting, and I was mind blown because he said, we had these tough conversations and the coaches got on us and we got on the coaches. And I'm like, what do you mean y'all got on the coaches? Like what really went down? So I really think there was some heated words that went back and forth. Like, hey,
Hey, Kales, why are you not giving me the ball on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1?
No, I don't think it was like that. I think it was like, yo, I want you to have the ball on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Because if you notice, last week CJ didn't run the sneak. This week CJ ran the sneak. And I think I truly believe I will. My tinfoil hat is on that CJ didn't like to sneak the ball. I don't think this is a.
Who would? With that offensive line, I would not like to sneak the ball. We're not getting any push. That's the thing.
I understand.
So CJ is in a bad spot having to sneak it, but it is effective.
And that's the point. Like if I'm the coach, I'm like, look, I get it. You're right, but I need 3 feet, bro. Go get me 3 feet.
Go get me 3 feet.
And it's like, this is what I need from you. Like in Philly, they do this religiously. It's called the tush push, and they're going to get you 2 yards all the time. So I believe that coaches would want that. I can't see them going, you know what? We're going to call a pass play, or we're going to call a run to the left side that hasn't blocked. Some of those play calls look like they were forced. And I believe that's why those conversations happen both ways. We talked about CJ stepping up in the pocket and being better in the pocket. I think that was some tough conversation that they had with CJ. Like, look, Jason Braddock, again, I got to shout him out. He was saying that if you look at CJ early in the season, he was running away from the pocket. Like they would make the hoop, the quote unquote hoop, and he would step outside of it, making the lines for the edges to get there easier instead of stepping into the pocket, into the protection that they made, so he'd have time to throw. On the amazing throw to Hutchinson, he steps in the pocket, steps up into the face of it, and drops an absolute dime. And I think 2 weeks ago, he'd have ran out and around, and he would have got sacked. So these are things that I think that went both ways, and I'm glad that they got it squared away. I'm glad that it looked so much cleaner, and hopefully this was the team meeting, the players only meeting, coaches only meeting, whatever.
Hopefully it wasn't a players only meeting
that they needed to get right. This was the turnaround. Okay, we're gonna start doing things better. You heard CJ talk about over the week he was working on mechanics because he was getting happy feet, and I'm sure they were telling him like, hey, we need you to stand tall. I know you're getting beat up, but this is going to help. And here we are a week later going, good job.
Yeah, I could see the sneak conversation coming from either side. It could be that CJ doesn't want to do it. It could be that they don't have faith in the O-line and they don't want to risk CJ doing it. But either way, I'm glad that they've kind of moved into a point where they're comfortable doing it, because this team is going to need it at some point. And I get like the discussions around the Seahawks game and how it went. Like, obviously I think we were both pretty disappointed. It could have been a lot worse, than it was. But I think that's part, and that's why when we talk about style points and winning games and stuff like that, like I know that you don't believe in style points, but I think we can both agree that the Seahawks game is confirmation that the offense wasn't where it needed to be yet. And the Denver game is going to be another checkpoint where we go, okay, time to see, are we where we're supposed to be yet or not? So that's what I'll say looking ahead. But I'm really, really stoked about the way the 49ers game went. Glad I got to be there. I got to meet the 2025 Texans fans of the year. I don't know if they regularly give that out to 2 people at a time, but if you've ever been to the games, you see those guys dressed up in I think it's like a Toa jersey and a Jake Hansen jersey, but I didn't see what it was on the back of it. It was just 39 and 35, but they were dressed in full pads, sitting down there at the bottom watching the game. It's pretty cool. My son was like, I'm gonna take a picture with those guys. I was like, okay, dude, here you go. Take a picture with those guys. It's your first game. We're gonna get the whole experience. So shout out to them. I told them they need to get on Twitter. I helped get them out there. We make sure Texans fan base can know their new fans of the year. Support them. So I mean, we've been pretty good. Look at Debbie the Texan. Look at everyone. We've been pretty good at supporting our fans of the year. So be good to get their names out there so we know who they are. But yeah, all right. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Bullpen. I have been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen, the #1 veteran-run podcast in the solar system. Veteran-run Texans podcast, I should say. I don't know if we're the #1 veteran-run podcast. I gotta hone in on the category. Maybe we are. Maybe
don't stop now. Yeah. Own that.
Who knows?
Of America.
Of America. Ever. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Pick the handoff. Stroud